So I said to the gut microbiologist at the university, I was like, okay, he says that's impossible because the milk couldn't have reached their gut and altered their gut microbiome, and it can't have an effect on their emotions at that point. And I said, well, how long does it take for a shot of whiskey to have an effect on your brain?
This is the Auto Community Podcast. All interviews presented on the Auto Community Podcast are designed to provide information and inspiration only. Guests of the podcast may present opinions and anecdotes that are solely their own. And as always, before beginning any treatment protocol, consult with your preferred medical provider. Hey everybody, welcome to the Auto Community Podcast. I'm really excited to have today's guest on. Saundra Traywick has been a friend of mine for quite some time, and her story is really quite interesting. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us, Saundra. So tell us a little bit about what you do now and how did you get to that place? Because it's very unconventional.
Yes. Well, first, I want to thank you for having me. And I want to thank you publicly for starting one of the only natural-minded PANDAS groups. Was it 7 years ago? Been a while.
Yeah, at least, but it's been a long time. Yeah.
There were just about 40 of us in that little group, and we just were bouncing ideas off of each other and sharing what worked. And that was just kind of a lifeline back then when things were really hard. So I really appreciate you and the work that you've done for the PANDAS community. Now, there's so many more groups and there's so many more people trying different things and trying the natural route. But back then it was just kind of a lifeline. So I really appreciate you and what you've done. So even back then, I was the one in the group talking about donkey milk, which we started when our daughter got PANDAS disease at age 6. And it was the abrupt onset, severe. And she had active strep, but we didn't know it at the time. She didn't have a fever. She didn't have any symptoms. It wasn't like we were not treating her strep, which I've had people kind of imply that, or they've implied that donkey milk only worked or it seemed to help because hers was a mild case. And that was absolutely not the case. So, all the symptoms, the OCD, separation anxiety, hallucinations, rages, all of the things, pretty much there. And it was pretty much overnight. And thankfully, we did get a proper diagnosis early, but the answer was, give her some antibiotics and she'll be fine. And then we found out that was not the case. And after the antibiotics, she got additional tics, a vocal tic, different things going on that she hadn't had previously. And the doctors didn't know what to do. I was the one telling them what I thought we should do and called the NIMH. And they said, our best guess is antibiotics every day until she's 18 or 21, or IVIG treatments at $10,000 a pop, because insurance isn't going to cover this, because people still didn't believe it was even a real condition.
Right. I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think, for the vast majority of parents, that was an acceptable answer because they didn't know where else to turn. And so for those of us who had already been kind of somewhat immersed in the natural health world, that answer never made sense to us. And I do think, early on, getting to that point of what are the other options? And for so many doctors to sit there and say, well, there just aren't any, that just never sat well with me or with any of these other moms early on in this group. And, like you said, it was such a major lifeline for all of us to be able to have that connection and create that community, even though we were so small and spread out all the way, all across the world. So when was the first time after your daughter's diagnosis, or even before, that you had heard about donkey milk, and what led you down that rabbit hole?
Oh, we had never heard of such a thing. And we had a little bit of land, but we didn't even have a house built here yet. And I had wanted to have a few goats and some chickens and, pretend farm. And when she got sick, I had actually, I'm thankful God had started leading me to a few books and things talking about, the Weston A. Price model and some different food and gut things. I was always the mom grinding my own wheat flour, and, we didn't eat Twinkies or junk food, or we didn't have chips in our house, none of that. So, and I was also very, I don't want to say the word on your podcast and get you, but, people would say, well, this happened to you because you gave your kid one of these or all of those, or what, which was not the case. So I'm thankful we didn't, because I think we could have had neuroinflammation to the point of severe autism if we had, and I kind of am leaning towards, we shouldn't even classify things as PANDAS or autism. We should just call them all neuroinflammation, because our children's brains are on fire. But after, I'm actually looking back now, I'm thankful that the doctors didn't pretend to have answers and didn't pretend that they knew that antibiotics and IVIG, it was their best guess, and they admitted it. And then when I called for the specialist, they were 3-4 months out to even see her. Our doctor did order an MRI in case, maybe she has a brain tumor. And I didn't get a call back for about 6 months to get her that MRI. And at that point, we had figured things out. I'm going, what if she had a brain tumor? She would be gone by now. It totally exposed the system faults for what they were long before now. People are seeing that on a much larger scale. But back then we were preaching, this is not right. This system is messed up. And discovering the gut and the brain connection kind of led me down that path. And when we saw the antibiotics didn't give us the solution we wanted, it did take care of the strep itself, but she still had these symptoms, and you're going, what is going on? And I was searching for answers and praying for answers. And we were seeing that within the few, the traditional PANDAS communities, kids were not getting better. They were maybe getting a little better, but then they still had to be on antibiotics. And if they went off, then they got worse. And I was like, they're not fixing this. And then the few doctors, there was one in Arkansas, one in Texas, I'm in Oklahoma, called. They were like, these are the experts. And then the nurse said, it'll be 3 or 4 months before we can see you. You want me to schedule an appointment? I said, well, what does he do to treat this? And I said, is it antipsychotic drugs? She said, well, yes. And I was like, well, I don't need an appointment. Why would I want to medicate symptoms when obviously there's brain inflammation and other things going on? So then you're on your own and, searching. But one thing I found was within the autism community, they were working to heal their kids, and they weren't taking no for an answer. And so I started researching autism. I found something that had the 2 circles, and in the center, it was PANDAS overlapping with autism. So I thought, okay, if this is overlapping, I'm going to start looking, what are the autism families having success with? And ran across camel milk, and we were already doing raw milk. And so I was like, okay, let's look into this. And I got some camel milk, and we completely overhauled our diet, which was already healthy compared to the standard American diet, but we switched to a paleo diet. I saw iridologist. I saw, there was only one homeopath I could find at the time in New York. So I was doing a Skype with him, which we didn't actually, I think it did give us some gains, but we didn't continue. I didn't really understand it at the time, but I think it was helpful. And to have that in my toolbox was helpful. So found camel milk within the autism community, got some camel milk, and she did get somewhat better with that. And we were actually thinking, okay, do we need to get a camel? This and the diet seemed to be the most helpful. And, I tried everything. I did it backwards. I tried everything and then started eliminating things. And if it didn't make a difference, then I was like, okay, we didn't need that. So we're eliminating all these, herbal concoctions I'm making her take and all these other things. And antibiotics, all that's gone. And, we kind of came to the point that she was about 90% better, but she wasn't 100%. There were still some things that we couldn't, get her back to. And one of those was she couldn't say, I love you to my husband, who she always would say that, and to my mom. And, she could to me, but not to these other people. It was an OCD kind of a block thing. Mm-hmm. And so we were looking at getting a camel, because I'm like, this is one of the essentials, and went to a camel farm, and this camel puts its jaws on her head like this. And the farmer's screaming, get her, it'll crush her skull. And I'm like, this is a field trip place. What do you mean these donkeys crush people's skulls? And yeah, it turns out they can be really dangerous. So, this is not an option. And there was a naturopath who was all into camel milk. I called her. I was like, can we like milk an alpaca or something like that? These are dangerous animals. And she said, oh, get a donkey. Some people do better with that, and try donkey milk. So we tried donkey milk. And within the first 30 minutes to an hour of her first dose, she said, I love you, Daddy, to my husband. And then got on the phone with my mom. I love you, Grandma. And she's crying. And she's like, what did you do? And I'm like, we gave her some donkey milk. I mean, we're literally talking tiny doses. And, at the time, it's like, maybe this is a coincidence. Maybe this is not, and we have actually sat in with researcher, one of the top gut microbiologists in the world, and another PANDAS top researcher. And we're talking about how to study this, how to actually get some research done that would give validity to what I'm seeing, but I can't talk about because I can't be making claims. And I'm not a doctor. And, this gut microbiologist, he said, that's impossible, because I'm telling multiple kids in rages and they get a dose of milk and their parents tell me they calm down. But it must have been a coincidence. And I'm like, okay, we'll give them cow milk next time. And they say, cow milk sends them into a rage. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's not just that you sat them down and made them drink the donkey milk. Something else is going on. So I said to the gut microbiologist at the university, I was like, okay. He says that's impossible because the milk couldn't have reached their gut and altered their gut microbiome, and it can't have an effect on their emotions at that point. And I said, well, how long does it take for a shot of whiskey to have an effect on your brain? And he looked at me, and the other researcher looked at me, and they were like, okay, so it's affecting the blood and going the blood brain, that's how it's working. And it's like, yeah, this doesn't all have to fit into one box. And, there's tons of research on it now about how, lysozyme content, super high, antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial, but it's not in the same way that an antibiotic would just wipe out your gut wholesale. There's also immunoglobulins, really high immunoglobulins, and we're working on research on that. So there's a lot of research behind it, but people will say, what's the thing about donkey milk that makes it so amazing? Like, it's not one thing. It's, I really firmly believe God put the whole thing together in the perfect package. So, the pharmacists that want to isolate, this is the lysozyme, this is what works. You can't do that. You can't just take one thing out, put it in a pill, and call it the solution. It's all synergistic and working together the way it's supposed to.
So I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but with the different milks, is there a different structure to them? How do they say, camel milk, for example, or donkey milk? What is the difference between that and, say, cow's milk or even breast milk?
Well, it is the closest to human breast milk of any milk. Mm-hmm. So donkey milk is the closest to breast milk of any milk. I've had people say, well, then why don't I just give my kid my breast milk, which is great. It's a difficult conversation to have with parents to say our breast milk is only as healthy as we are. And I didn't know that when I was pregnant. I thought my breast milk suddenly filtered out all the junk I was eating. I really had no idea that I needed to be eating organic and, detox my mercury fillings, all of that. So, you have to tread lightly there. And there are other cultures where, and you can find videos in South America, they actually take the donkeys through the streets, milk them right there. Parents come up with their infants and give them a little shot of donkey milk because they believe that it is the best start for their child's gut and for colicky symptoms and things like that. And there's some interesting video footage for that in South America with a physician and a mom who are working on having that milk available for children. In Europe as well, kids that are allergic to cow milk and soy, they can typically drink donkey milk because it doesn't have the same proteins. So it's really big in Europe for kids with cow milk protein allergies and for soy allergies. And they even use it in hospitals for children as well. And here it's kind of in an uphill battle. We're trying to educate people and trying to walk a fine line. So, and people say, well, why not drink cow milk? I'm like, well, cows have 4 stomachs and we have 1, and they're built to, and donkeys have 1 stomach. And, there are graphs and charts that show, and I've got lots of research on our website showing the difference between camel milk, cow milk, donkey milk, goat milk. And, it always measures certain things. It doesn't always, it can't measure everything within all of them, but, it is the closest to human breast milk of any milk. It is lower fat than human breast milk. So, we were contacted by a company that they had a formulation company and they do work with giant companies. And a company had reached out to them about making our donkey milk that we import into baby formula. And then shortly after that, the FDA seized our milk. So
before we get into that, just a question that I get all the time is, how does it taste?
Well, there's a really great video from Rhett and Link, Good Mythical Morning. It's hilarious. That's on our blog, and they did a taste test of all these different milks. And so if you want to see a honest review of somebody just trialing different milks, that's a fun one to watch. But it's actually really slightly sweet, a little bit like hazelnut. Our milk that we import from the Azores has almost a grassy or fresh flavor than our milk because they're on grass year round, where ours has more of a sweet flavor. We have to feed them hay in the winter. In the Azores, it's about 75 degrees year round, and they have, island breezes and rain. And so they don't have to supplement with hay like we do. So the flavor definitely depends on what they're eating themselves. So there's a little difference there between our imported milk and our raw milk. And our raw milk, you have to come to the farm to pick it up. We can't ship it. It's against the law. And I'll have people ask me to ship it. And looking back, we actually think some of those may have been framing us, trying to get us to do things that they could then catch us. So we're very careful. And I'm very careful. I'm not giving medical advice. That's how they actually have caught other farmers that have been doing different things, like one farmer that was doing something with cow milk and Lyme disease and even helped the senator. And then they came after him. So I'm a little bit on edge right now because everything's really fresh. We actually lost, and the FDA would say they didn't seize our milk. They held it for half the year and now are making us send it back to Portugal. So we're working now on bringing in more milk from Portugal that we can continue to, ship out to families across the United States. And that should be here in January. And we're just praying that they don't hold it for another 6 to 8 months, because it's been a learning experience of how little power we have as individuals and how much power they have. And there are no laws that would say they have to analyze it within a certain amount of time, which, it took them over a month to lab analyze it. And then it was clean. So then they sent it to their next department to analyze our packaging, which took another 3 months or so. And then eventually I was at one point emailing the director and asking for help getting us answers and getting this process through, because we're a small company. I mean, we don't have any employees, and this has really hurt our farm in Portugal as well. And it's really only by the grace of God that we're still here, and our farm in Oklahoma is still here, and that we have hay for our animals for the winter. And, it's just been actually very miraculous. And it's just through God's provision that we're still able to do what we're doing. And hopefully we've gotten past that and we'll be able to continue to bring it in.
Okay. So kind of backtracking a little bit, how does one get from, okay, maybe we should get a donkey to help our daughter, to like, hey, maybe we should start a full-on donkey dairy and, make this available, to other local families that are struggling. And you guys host a fantastic event, at your farm, and everything is it's gorgeous out there. But how did you get to that place? What was it that made you start heading down that path?
Right. Well, within our own little small group, I'm sure you heard me, you guys got to try this. You guys got to try this, but I couldn't ship it to you because it was illegal. And so it was really hard for families to come to Oklahoma and get raw donkey milk. And we were, I was trying to get families in Oklahoma to come and try it. So we would, we give the first jar free if they came and got 2 more jars. And I try to explain that, it's like a doctor wouldn't give you one antibiotic and then you say it didn't work and you didn't take the whole bottle. That's a terrible analogy, but you know what I'm saying? So we tried to get them to try enough of it. And then you do go very slow, and you don't want to have a Herxheimer die-off type reaction, which, people need to understand what that can look like. And with homeopathy as well, you have to understand sometimes it looks worse before it gets better. But, Oklahoma, we love Oklahoma, but there's an uphill battle. And this is across the board anywhere with, if I start talking about Herxheimer reactions and that you need to start slow and all of this, people become terrified of trying it at all. And I'm trying to educate, well, you're giving your child this drug and you're not looking at this 4-page document of side effects. And this is a natural thing that God gives us. And we have to, why are we more scared of trying donkey milk that actually tastes delicious than we are of a pharmaceutical? And that is an educational, process. And I mean, as well as I do that with PANDAS, there's so many symptoms and there's so many things. So it's harder to measure success. We now have doctors, MDs that have seen it and are sending kids to our farm to get donkey milk, which is huge progress. I've even heard that there's a pharmacist that is telling people about it and has seen how it works. And those little things really help us. And, that keeps us going during times like this year when we're like, there's way too much risk. There's way too much. We don't make all the money that we should be making for the level of stress and anxiety and risk that we take in doing this, not just from the federal or from government overreach. Also, my husband's out there milking by hand and at any point could get kicked in the head and it would kill you. So there's we are grateful. We have raised our donkeys and, there's a huge training session. We started out with 3 and now we have 35. Most of them have been born on our farm, but it takes 4 years before you can breed them and get a baby. So the babies that were born, how long we've been at this, they're just now getting old enough to even have a baby for us. And you share the milk. It's not like cows where you just take it away. Donkeys are very smart. They're very intelligent and they're very kind when they're treated right. So we have a great herd and they're amazing with kids with, autism, PANDAS and other spectrum disorders and neurological issues. So trying to shorten up the story, but we started making skincare because I actually couldn't even give away the milk. And so we're like, we've got to do something to pay this feed bill. And in Europe, skincare was huge with donkey milk, and it still is. And so we got involved in the Made in Oklahoma program, and they did a little story about us. And that story kind of spurred tons of other news stories. We're on about every TV station news in Oklahoma. And a lot of those stories got picked up nationwide. And I had people in California, I just saw you on the news, and so that was a great thing for us as well, because we got to talk about PANDAS disease. So at a time when doctors didn't even know what it was, our story, because it was unique and it talked about donkeys, was shared across the nation and educated a lot of people about PANDAS disease. So, a lot of nonprofits are about awareness. And I'm like, we've done the awareness thing. Let's move on to helping them. Let's give them hope and not these horrific stories that are a lot of the PANDAS stories of this is just the way these kids are going to be the rest of their lives. Give them hope and give them solutions and try to encourage them to not take no for an answer, even if that answer is coming from someone who professes to be an authority. So after that, we got kind of inundated with people needing milk, and we still only had a few donkeys. And so we traveled out of state, got more mammoth donkeys. They're critically endangered. So finding mammoth donkeys was difficult. Most people are stopping raising them because they're expensive to raise and nobody had any point for them. So they were actually just going away. And so we increased our herd, and we had an amazing veterinarian that has a grandson who also uses our milk now. And so he has saved the lives of our donkeys and really helped save our farm multiple times. It's just been really stories of miracle after miracle of provision and being able to continue doing this. But when all these people needed milk, we had people say, okay, it is expensive. They make ounces of milk instead of gallons like cows. So, the farm itself has never been profitable. The skincare helps us continue to do what we do with the farm and help kids. And we had someone say, why don't you start a nonprofit? You're giving away milk anyway. You need a nonprofit. So we were able to start a nonprofit, which is expensive in itself, but we were blessed with a gift to do that and an amazing board. And now the nonprofit hosts the health events on our farm, which the health events kind of grew from a parent reached out to me, wanted to try the donkey milk, and her child was really struggling. And I was, like I usually do, said, well, you need to do this and this and this and this and this and this. There is no magic pill. There's usually lots of different, homeopathy, all of these things. Well, you and I know insurance doesn't cover that. And this family couldn't afford it. I was like, this is wrong and it needs to be fixed. And we need to have resources for families so they have access to information. And I had gone down all of the things from the iridologist to the naturopath to all of these things. And you know as well as I do, every consultation, you drop $350 to $1,000. And everyone says they can fix your kid, whether it's naturally or pharmaceutically. And you are so desperate, you'll do anything. And so you're just shelling out money and you're very quickly broke and your kid's still not better. So I wanted an environment where the kids could come because of separation anxiety. They can't, going to the doctor is terrifying. And I wanted to have all these different avenues of health, alternative health, traditional, all of these different modalities so that parents could come and visit with them for free. Or this year we're charging $10 an adult and the kids are still free. And I also didn't want it to be a high pressure sales thing where the practitioners are sign on the dotted line and I'll cure your kid, And so we kind of had this vision for this and I had no idea how much that kind of thing would cost. And I guess ignorance is bliss. And we started doing all of this, then got the nonprofit set up. Then we had funds start coming in to host this event. And we have had 2 so far. We had hoped to do it every year, but COVID happened and I didn't want to have the environment and our board didn't want to have fearful environment at the farm or parents that don't play with that kid or, these kids have enough fear. We didn't want to have that happen here. So we postponed 1 year, had it next year. The following year, we did not have funding to do it. So we're actually having it in April. And I hope that you will be one of our speakers. I know I haven't officially asked you yet, but if you'd like.
I would love to do that. It was an amazing experience. And I would come no matter what, but I'm happy to do whatever you need. So
yeah, that would be great. We had parents that really, you resonated with them and your story resonated with them. And I don't know if I ever told you, but one of the parents told me afterward that her child with PANDAS did not get to come to the event because he was really struggling that day. But she came with 2 of the siblings and they listened to your talk and you talked about your son and how his behavior was and what he was going through. And this mom said that her 2 boys told her that your story, they realized their brother wasn't faking because he was like your son. And, you don't realize what the siblings are thinking and that they probably think this child could be faking it or, just like adults think about our children that they're, just badly behaved or, faking it or whatever, or we just need to spank them. And so that story in itself reached some hearts and some children. And that's another great thing about this event is that the siblings are involved. And we've had kids say, the first event, one of the kids said to her mom, I met another kid like me. They don't know other kids with PANDAS. They don't have friends that struggle with what they struggle with. So just, they get to come, have fun on the farm, hopefully start to make some progress and hear different things without having to shell out thousands of dollars. And it's not just about donkey milk at all. The first year we did have a researcher from Portugal that came and spoke about the donkey milk research he was doing. But the second year, I didn't speak. Our veterinarian did speak. But, people don't come because they're like, well, I'm not doing donkey milk, so I don't want to come to the event. I'm like, it's not about that. We want everyone to feel welcome and to come and to hear. And, we always say donkey milk is not a magic bullet. There's so many things, so many pieces to the puzzle that you've got to put together.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And, I also think, what something you said in the beginning was so poignant. And I think a lot of people may have missed that. So I just kind of wanted to go back and say, we think of these labels when it comes to various illnesses, autism, ADD, PANDAS, even more, traditionally physical autoimmune type illnesses like lupus and, MS, and even going into things like cancers, right? And what it all comes down to me is, this whole systemic dysfunction of, it's a breakdown of our physical bodies in general. And we talk about autoimmune disease, as if it's, you have to have some sort of a label or put some sort of a label on it. But essentially, a lot of it is it's just a different manifestation of the dysfunction that's going on within the human body. When it comes to donkey milk, I know you mentioned the immunoglobulins. So, and I know that's really important for a lot of people. So is there, just anecdotally, are there other people coming to you who are looking for assistance with perhaps other diagnoses or just generic autoimmune conditions? What does that picture look like? Who's coming to you?
Well, our imported milk was hopefully and will continue to be a part of a program with Southern California Allergy Institute, which is an amazing program in California that people come from around the world and their children are anaphylactic to different foods. When they go through this program, I believe the majority of them can then eat anything by the end. And our donkey milk was a part of that program. So, that's no longer anecdotal. They're using a food induction, and I've looked at the protocol from some of the parents, and they're starting with these different foods and taking them through all, donkey milk isn't the only thing, but it's one part. And I would love it if they would include a gut test at the beginning and after each food. I believe they're and I don't know, I would love to speak with these doctors, but I believe they're testing the allergen response, where if we would test the gut response and where is the gut and what are each of these foods doing to the gut that then gets them to a point of a healthy gut microbiome where they can tolerate eating peanuts or cow milk or whatever it is. The thing that's really hard about selling our imported milk is that I just get orders on my website and I ship them out. And I see people order again and again and again, or some people order once, and I don't get to hear their story. I don't get to hear how it helped them or what they're using it for. Sometimes they will put reviews on our website, which are amazing. Those reviews, we were accused by authorities of making them up. And my husband said, name one, we'll call them, because they do. It starts to look like snake oil. I have to actually not approve some of the reviews because if I approve this review, I'm going to be shut down in a heartbeat because it sounds like this is bogus. But they're all real reviews on our website. So people can go and read those. And it's donkeymilkforhealth.com. And then our skincare website, dulcededonke.com. But we have people that come to the farm anecdotally. Well, this is not anecdotal. They come to the farm and they have things from arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile arthritis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, type 2 diabetes, tons of different autoimmune diseases. And we've had people come to us and they live in America now, but they call and they say they have cancer, breast cancer. And they've gotten really upset with me that was when I didn't have the freeze-dried milk. And they're like, in my country, which I think she was from Iran, she said the doctors prescribe donkey milk along with chemo and radiation and everything else for cancer. I was like, well, in this country, they don't, and I can't ship it to you. But there is research now on donkey milk for lung tumors, and there is research on donkey milk for breast cancer, breast tumors. So, it's nice to start to see research coming out. It's difficult to see, and you want to be able to have them do tests on all these things and try to find out what is it, was it just the steroids kicking in? Was it a combination of what these parents were doing? Like we do, there's so many things, and these are all anecdotal stories, and we haven't had other children, as far as I know, with that condition come and try the milk. Maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was the placebo effect. We always have to say, what do you believe will help you? And we've had parents tell us their child drinks one drink of the milk and they'll say, I believe this is going to help me. And I think there is a lot to that as well. If you don't believe something is going to help you, if you don't have faith in something beyond, a hopeless situation, there's a lot to that. So maybe it's the faith in that God can provide something that would help us that's helping them. There doesn't have to be research to back up everything. There's a lot of things we don't have to understand. And maybe that's a good thing.
I think that's such an important point. I think being a homeopath, a lot of people say to me, well, how can this help? Because when I explain to them what homeopathy is, that it's essentially just an energetic dose of something, especially at the real high potencies. We're not giving a material dose except at the lower potencies. And they said, well, how on earth can that help? And I said, well, I'm happy to share the research, but ultimately, if you don't believe it will help, then it probably won't, because ultimately there's more to our physical being. There's more to our physicality than simply, bones and tissues and organs and things like that. And really, isn't that what makes us human anyway? Because, obviously a corpse, we might say, well, that was a human, right? But they are no longer, because they no longer have that essence that makes us really who we are. So that's such an important point. Okay, so what is going on for you now? How can people support you and the farm? Let's kind of, give the general overview. Obviously, we've got the skincare. Those wanting the donkey milk may be able to purchase in January, it looks like. And then those who are local to you, what do they need to do in order to come visit?
Oh, well, right now we do have raw donkey milk available, and it's frozen in glass jars. I don't like plastics and all of that. So they can come and they can email us and we will get them raw donkey milk. They have to schedule a time to come and pick it up. We do have our skincare available, and that, right now is huge for us, that we're able to continue to help support the farm through selling our soaps and skincare. And, that has a following in itself. We have a natural deodorant that, when our daughter first got sick, one of her first symptoms was actually, as a 6-year-old, horrific BO. And a lot of them, that's, they're detoxing. And I didn't want to put toxic deodorant and block her from being able to sweat. So we developed a natural deodorant that actually we've had people tell us how it helps them to sweat for the first time, and they can't sweat. And now they're able to sweat, which is a good thing. We don't want to smell, but sweating is good. So we have that line. And then donkeymilkforhealth.com will have our powdered milk available in hopefully January, working on that. Pray for us. That would be the biggest support. And we do have, and I can send you a link, sort of a give, send, go that we set up early on when this happened. And our hay cost doubled, and we had to go out of state to get our hay because of the drought. So we're really thankful for the support that people have shared that way for our farm. To support the nonprofit, which is separate from our farm, through the nonprofit, you can support children with homeopathy, or, we are kind of setting up a scholarship type of program to help fund, whether it's blood work, homeopathy, and we have approved practitioners. You're one of them, or if they need donkey milk and they can't afford it after that first jar. That was another reason for the nonprofit, because I can't turn people down. And if they come to me and say, I can't afford the donkey milk, how do I say no to that? So now we still get paid for the donkey milk the same amount that we would we don't just give everything away 100%, whether it's homeopathy, donkey milk, whatever. We found that, unfortunately, sometimes when people would come and we were really short of milk, we'd give them 1 jar of milk and we'd find out later they let it rot in their fridge. And, there is something to investing in something that you find value in. So if they truly can't afford the milk or the treatment they need, we want them to be able to, because one of the worst things in the world is to know there's something out there that could help your kid, but you can't afford to get that for them. And one of my unofficial mottos is you shouldn't have to be wealthy to be healthy. And unfortunately, our culture has sort of set us up for that. Either you take the traditional pharmaceutical route, which insurance pays for, or you have to pay out of pocket. And we both know that's very expensive, and you should be paid well for what you do. You're helping a lot of people. And I know you're the same. You don't want anyone to not get the care they need. So we want this nonprofit to be able to compensate you fairly and help take a little burden off of those families that need the homeopathy, but may not be able to afford it otherwise. Same thing with donkey milk, same thing with some blood work that they need, or a gut microbiome test, or whatever it is. We hope to be able to one day raise enough funds to be able to help thousands of children. And I'm a terrible fundraiser. So, if they want to donate to heehawforhealth.com, that would be amazing. And on behalf of all the children with PANDAS that we want to be able to bless through that. And also the alternative practitioners that, as inflation goes up and the cost of healthy foods goes up, it's going to be harder and harder for these families to be able to afford donkey milk or to be able to afford homeopathy. And we don't want it to be a last resort. We want it to be a first resort. And enabling that to happen for more families would be a huge blessing for so many people. And just spread the word about our health event. It's April 1st. April Fools, so easy day to remember. Pray for good weather. It is outside. We've had people say, why don't you have it in a conference center? I'm like, because that's boring. And it's not fun for the kids. And, we have St. Nicholas come, and even though it's in April, he still agreed to come. And he always gives all the kids a little stuffed animal that those are donated. And he tells the story of St. Nick and his donkey, and we bring one of the donkeys around and the kids pet it. And it's just an amazing, really fun day. Beyond just the health aspect of it, the kids are laughing and playing and being outside. And one of our board members, she's an amazing PANDAS doctor here in Oklahoma. And I was like, well, there's the doctors, and a lot of people can find all this on Zoom and podcasts and whatnot. And, I want to make sure that the funding goes where it needs to go most. Would that be better spent on scholarships? And they're like, this event, these kids being here, this is what's important. And I think that really is key to a lot of it, is these kids get to be here. They get to meet other kids like them. They get to meet siblings of other kids' siblings, and the families, the parents talk to each other, and they learn more from talking to each other, like we learned from each other years ago and continue to, than they learn from a lot of these practitioners and, doctors. And so having that community and somebody to talk to and somebody to share your heart with is just huge. And what better place to do it than on a farm, around a fire pit, or sitting and listening to these doctors. And, a lot of people say, just do it all online and have it all be out there on YouTube. Well, we have some of them on YouTube. Yours from that first year is on YouTube and it's on our website, but other ones I uploaded to our YouTube channel, and within minutes, they were taken down and I was given a strike for misinformation. So, and these were doctors, these were the MDs. So a lot of them don't want that out there, and they're not going to share this. Some of them don't even let us record it. Mm-hmm. So, if you want to hear about this stuff, you need to come actually be there. And there's a lot to being there.
It's a beautiful event. I think for anybody who's ever been there, I would really encourage you to return. And for those of you who have not, I would say it is well worth the trip. I think I spoke to about 25 different families that day individually in 15-minute, increments, and then spoke to many other people. And there's a reason I called my podcast the Auto Community Podcast, right? It's really about trying to create that sense of community, because just like your event, so much of what is lacking in this world is the ability to connect. It's the reason why I started the Saving Our Pandas group on Facebook, and why I wanted to connect with as many other moms who were doing it the way I was doing it, which was, more unconventional, I suppose. However, a conventional, was relative, because even the traditional MDs and things like that were not well versed and weren't proving to be very helpful for most people. Okay, so one more time, just the website URLs and where people can find you, Saundra. I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. I can't wait for people to hear all of this amazing information. I was just talking to a couple of people yesterday and they were like, donkey milk? What the heck is that? So I'm so excited. I finally have an interview to share with them. So
thank you so much. It really means a lot to us. And really, that's the best testimonial, because I have to say to everything, I'm not a doctor. It's not medical advice. This is just what we're seeing, or this is what other parents have told us. And, we're so careful about that. And sometimes I feel like I have a gag on me that I can't share this. And that is the most difficult thing for us, because it's like, I want to tell everybody about all these things that could help them. And now there's so many of us that are silenced, and people need to hear about homeopathy. They need to hear about these things. But if we tell them, then we're risking so much. And so by parents telling other parents, this community is how we're going to share this. This is community is how we're going to tell other parents. These are the things, multiple things that helped us. And that, I think, is essential. And really, that's done out of love and care for each other, because we see the pain they're going through. And I appreciate your podcast and what you're doing and spreading the word. And, years ago, your friendship, even though we'd never met, it was amazing to have somebody that I felt like understood. So thank you for that. So our websites, we have donkeymilk4health.com, all spelled out. And that's where we have our powdered freeze-dried donkey milk. Hopefully available again in June. We can ship it anywhere in the United States. And then we have our skincare website, which they can go to dulcededonke.com or look up oklahomadonkey.com, whichever one's easier to spell. And then our nonprofit is heehawforhealth.com, all spelled out. And we would, appreciate any support on any of those platforms. And the nonprofit, it's the end of the year. I know everybody's maxed out. We do have also on Benevity, which is a nonprofit vetting thing. We're listed there. So you can have your employer match your gift. And people are finding Hee Haw For Health on that website as well. So that's a huge way that they could double their impact by giving through their work, and their employer will match their gift. And that would help us to be able to do these events hopefully every year, and then also provide scholarships and sponsor kids to be able to afford things like homeopathy, donkey milk, blood work, seeing a naturopath, whatever. We're hopeful that we'll be able to reach more kids that way. So I think that's all of them. And then, of course, on Saving Our Pandas, the Facebook group, and we've had Facebook pages for all of that too. But they can, if they want to find out how weird I really am, they can go to Saving Our Pandas and search my name.
Okay, so I just want to close on a fun note, because I find your videos on Instagram just hilarious. So apparently you have a donkey who knows how to open the door.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We actually do have it's YouTube now. I have a YouTube.
Okay.
Donkey Dairy, and I don't do much with it, but yeah, our baby donkey. We had a baby donkey born this year, and her mom, actually, her health went downhill really fast after she was born. So the mom was dying, and the baby had torn umbilical cord on the inside. So that was another miracle that we got her treated in time, and the way that all worked out. But she was going to die. She was going to go septic and die. And OSU did a surgery on her. But she and her mom were in a hospital for the first 2 to 3 weeks of her life. And so then when she came home, they told us, you're going to have to put her mom down, which was heartbreaking. And she did rally for a little while, but then we did have to put her down. And then this baby donkey, because it had had major abdominal surgery, had to be in isolation, couldn't play with the other baby donkeys, or the other donkeys had to be in this little pen. So she couldn't run or jump or do anything baby donkeys do for months. So we're bottle feeding her, which is out of a bucket, and giving her $20 an hour donkey milk. And we're like, this is going to kill us. And this donkey decided she's a human. And so once we let her out, she didn't want anything to do with the donkeys because we fed her and the dogs hang out with her and the cats and the chickens. And so she will come to the door and open it if we've left it unlocked. She'll open it and just walk in the house and let us know that she's hungry and she wants her milk. And she's a mess. She goes for walks with us. We actually have Harvest Toast now. I should talk about that because that's become a big thing. Harvest Toast is an RV service that people can sign up for. I think it's like, I don't know, $50 if you have an RV, and you can stay at wineries and farms and museums and whatnot. And so we signed up for that when all of this happened to try to generate more income. And they're supposed to spend about $20, $25 when they stay here, and they get to stay at our event area, and we have a zip line and lots of fun things, all the event things that are up there, and they get kind of a private playground to stay at. And our little donkey will go up there and hang out with them all the time and go for walks with them through the woods. And she's becoming famous on Harvest Toast too, because people are like, oh, I miss Tinkerbell. So she's hilarious. All of our donkeys have fun personalities, but she's like this whole different thing of, she's decided she's a person. She plays with our dog. She's just like very different and a mess, but she's fun. So yeah. If people want to have RVs and they want to come and stay, we do have that option as well. And, it's a fun way for people to come and get their donkey milk and stay here and experience the farm at a different level. So that's been fun.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Saundra. I really look forward to seeing you in April, and everybody come on down to the Hee Haw For Health so you can meet Tinkerbell, the famous baby donkey.
Oh, thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.